In these times of political uncertainty, where the line between truth and deception seems increasingly blurred, we seek clarity and wisdom more than ever. As followers of Christ, we are called to discern the truth, look beyond surface appearances, and examine the heart of every situation. This is why we must engage with current events with a critical mind and a heart firmly rooted in God's truth. In a recent interview, Judge Joe Brown made profound and alarming comments about Vice President Kamala Harris, raising questions beyond politics and touching on deeper issues of integrity and leadership. Judge Brown, known for his unapologetic opinions, didn't hold back in assessing Harris's political rise. His remarks serve as a wake-up call for many Christians who believe in justice and truth. As believers, we must ask ourselves, what values are being upheld by our leaders? And how do their actions align with the principles of righteousness and justice we hold dear? Judge Brown labeled Harris a fraud, questioning her competence and the narrative she had built around herself. These are not merely political accusations. They are moral concerns that challenge us to reflect on the leadership we desire for our nation. As we explore these pressing issues, please watch the video, subscribe to our channel, Jesus' Story, and share your thoughts in the comments below. This channel is a space where we can come together to reflect on current events through the lens of our Christian faith, seeking God's wisdom and guidance in every aspect of life. Let's stay informed, stay prayerful, and stand for the truth in all things. Together, we can navigate these complex times with the light of Christ as our guide. Judge Joe Brown's critique of Kamala Harris delves more deeply than just her public persona. It challenges the integrity of the story she tells about herself. As Christians, we are reminded in Proverbs 12 verse 22 that the Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Judge Brown's remarks call into question the authenticity of Harris's narrative, suggesting that her rise in politics is not built on the foundation of truth, but rather on a fabricated image carefully crafted to appeal to voters. This should deeply concern those of us who value integrity and righteousness in our leaders. Brown's most pointed criticism lies in what he describes as the manufactured persona of Harris. He highlights specific inconsistencies in her story that, if true, undermine her credibility. For instance, her narrative of being part of school integration in California doesn't align with historical facts, as Judge Brown, who worked as a teacher during that period, notes that there was no segregation in California schools at the time. This discrepancy raises a larger question. If a leader is willing to manipulate their personal story for political gain, what other aspects of their leadership might be equally deceptive? This critique strikes at the heart of what we, as Christians, are called to uphold: truth. Jesus himself declared in John 14 verse 6, "I am the way and the truth and the life," reminding us that truth is not just a moral principle but an essential part of our faith. When we see leaders constructing false narratives, we must question whether their actions reflect our cherished values. Are they leading with the integrity that mirrors Christ, or are they more concerned with self-promotion and political survival? Judge Brown also points out Harris's claims about her college years, noting that her story of smoking marijuana while listening to Tupac is factually impossible, as Tupac was a child during the time she referenced. This further suggests a pattern of dishonesty that should not be taken lightly by Christians who expect truthfulness and sincerity from those in power. When we see leaders twisting facts to fit a popular narrative, we must remember the warning from Proverbs 16 verse 28. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and gossip separates close friends. Clearly, a narrative built on lies harms the individual's credibility, divides communities, and leads people away from what is right. Reflecting on these criticisms, it's vital to remember that leadership is about more than just rhetoric and public appearances. It's about character, truth, and justice, qualities that we, as believers, should seek in those who represent us. Let us remain prayerful, asking God for discernment as we navigate the complexities of today's political landscape. And may we hold our leaders accountable to the same standards of truth that we seek to live by. As we continue to explore Kamala Harris's rise in politics, we must consider her public image and the relationships and opportunities that have shaped her career. Proverbs 27 verse 17 reminds us, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." Yet, the people Harris aligned herself with throughout her journey raised serious questions about her motivations and principles. Judge Joe Brown highlights these critical connections, revealing how Harris's early political career benefited from influential figures who helped propel her forward, often in ways that seem more calculated than earned. One of the most significant relationships Judge Brown brings to light is Harris's connection with Willie Brown, a former mayor of San Francisco and influential figure in the Democratic Party. According to Brown, Willie Brown provided Harris with a prestigious position that demanded little of her time or effort, but compensated her with a generous salary. This part-time role, which reportedly required only a few public appearances per month, paid her an annual salary of $72,000. This amount increased substantially when she was appointed to a medical advisory committee. Such a lucrative position with minimal responsibilities raises serious ethical concerns. Was this role genuinely earned or given to curry favor and build political alliances? As Christians, we are called to examine the motives behind our actions and those of our leaders. Galatians 6 verse 7 says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." If Harris's rise to power was achieved through connections and financial backing rather than merit, it prompts us to question the integrity of her leadership. Are her decisions indeed in the people's interest, or are they influenced by the same influential individuals who have funded and guided her career? Judge Brown also touches on how these connections provided critical financial backing for Harris's campaign for Attorney General of California. One particularly troubling alliance was with One West Bank, a financial institution heavily involved in the mortgage fraud crisis during the 2008 economic meltdown. Judge Brown points out that George Soros, a key investor in the bank, and Steven Mnuchin, who served as CEO then, played pivotal roles in financing Harris's campaign. Once elected as Attorney General, Harris used her position to dismiss over 5,200 felony indictments against the bank, a move that many found questionable given the scale of the financial fraud involved. This raises profound moral concerns about the nature of political power and the role of justice. As followers of Christ, we are reminded in Isaiah 1 verse 17 to learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed. When leaders, particularly those entrusted with the law, prioritize personal gain and political alliances over the pursuit of justice, it erodes public trust. Harris's actions, as highlighted by Judge Brown, seem to reflect a troubling pattern of placing personal and political interests above the welfare of the people she was meant to serve. As we reflect on these aspects of Harris's career, it is essential to remember that leadership requires accountability. Proverbs 28 verse 16 warns, "A ruler who lacks understanding is a great oppressor, but the one who hates ill-gotten gain will enjoy a long reign." Let us, as believers, continue to pray for discernment as we consider the leaders who seek to represent us, and may we uphold the values of truth, justice, and integrity in every aspect of our public life. As we dive deeper into Kamala Harris's political record, we must critically examine her decisions as California's Attorney General and how those decisions reflect, or contradict, the values of justice and integrity. For Christians, pursuing justice is a core tenet of our faith. Micah 6 verse 8 reminds us of God's command, to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Yet, Harris's track record, as highlighted by Judge Joe Brown, suggests that her actions often fell short of this calling, raising serious concerns for those of us who seek leaders who uphold righteousness. One of the most controversial decisions in Harris's career was her dismissal of over 5,200 felony indictments against One West Bank. This bank, deeply implicated in the 2008 financial crisis, was accused of widespread mortgage fraud that left countless families devastated, losing their homes and livelihoods. Judge Brown questions why, after receiving financial backing from George Soros and Steven Mnuchin, Harris used her position to shield the bank from accountability. For many, this decision is not just a political issue but a moral one. As Christians, God's justice demands that the oppressed be defended and those responsible for wrongdoing be held accountable. Isaiah 1 verse 17. The Bible consistently calls us to side with the marginalized and the oppressed. Proverbs 31 verses 8 to 9 instructs us, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy." Yet, in this case, Harris's actions seem to reflect the opposite. By dismissing these felony indictments, She appeared to protect the powerful at the expense of ordinary people suffering from the fallout of the financial crisis. This decision raises serious questions about her priorities and whether justice truly guided her leadership actions. Further complicating Harris's claim of being tough on crime is her 2005 proposal for a three-strike policy that would allow individuals to be arrested multiple times before facing any significant consequences. While this policy may have been framed as an effort to address crime, Judge Brown suggests that it exposed a leniency inconsistent with her tough-on-crime image. This inconsistency is troubling for Christians who believe in the biblical principle of fair and just punishment. We are called to be discerning, not swayed by mere appearances but guided by the truth. John 7 verse 24. Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. Judge Brown also touches on an alarming case in which Harris's office prosecuted the parents of children who missed school, leading to harsh penalties in situations that should have been handled with compassion and understanding. One tragic example involved a family whose daughter, who has sickle cell disease, was penalized despite her serious health condition. The Bible teaches us to show mercy and compassion in the face of suffering. James 2 verse 13. Mercy triumphs over judgment. Yet, in this instance, Harris's office appeared to prioritize punitive measures over the well-being of the family involved, a decision that many Christians would find morally unacceptable. As we reflect on these controversial policies and decisions, we must remember the importance of integrity and accountability in leadership. Proverbs 29 verse 2 says, "When the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan." Our believers hold our leaders to the highest standards of justice. These questionable decisions benefit the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable, and pray for the wisdom to see through political posturing. Let us seek leaders who reflect the character of Christ. Leaders who, like Jesus, will defend the oppressed and uphold the truth, even when it is brutal. In politics, perception can often be just as powerful as reality. But as Christians, we are called to see beyond the surface, to seek truth amid deception. John 8 verse 32 reminds us, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." In Kamala Harris's case, Judge Joe Brown exposes a pattern of carefully crafted public perception that seems designed to manipulate rather than reveal who she truly is. This calls us to reflect on how much of what we see is genuine and how much is part of a broader strategy to win political favor. Judge Brown's remarks reveal that much of Harris's public persona has been manufactured to present an image that appeals to key demographics. For example, Harris has often portrayed herself as connected to urban culture and the struggles of everyday Americans. But Judge Brown points to glaring inconsistencies in this portrayal. For instance, her claims of listening to Tupac while in college have been debunked by simple facts, as Tupac was still a child when she claimed to be jamming to his music. Such fabrications are not merely minor missteps. They suggest a deliberate attempt to connect with voters superficially, prioritizing popularity over authenticity. This tendency to shift and reshape her image depending on the political winds reveals a deeper issue: a lack of steadfastness in values. As believers, we are taught to stand firm in our convictions, as Ephesians 6 verse 13 instructs, "Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm." A leader who adjusts their stance to suit the audience of the moment risks leading the nation astray. Judge Brown's critique highlights this concern, showing that Harris's words and actions often seem more focused on appealing to the crowd than upholding a consistent vision of justice and leadership. Furthermore, Judge Brown suggests Harris's rallies, often filled with celebrities and famous figures, are carefully staged to create an illusion of widespread support. Reports of busing and supporters to fill seats at her events raise questions about the authenticity of her appeal. For Christians, this tactic should be deeply concerning. The Bible teaches us in Matthew 7 verse 15 to beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Leaders who rely on staged events and false images may not be leading with the integrity and humility we are called to seek in those who govern us. Beyond the staging of her events, Judge Brown emphasizes the strategic crafting of Harris's narrative to win over different voting blocs. This willingness to shift positions and present different faces to different audiences raises concerns about whether she can be trusted to lead with integrity. As Christians, we look to Proverbs 11 verse 3, which says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them." A leader who lacks integrity, who bends to every breeze of political convenience, cannot provide the steady hand needed to guide a nation through difficult times. As we consider Kamala Harris's public perception and strategic moves, we must reflect on the leadership we need. Leaders willing to manipulate their image, shift their values, and rely on deception to gain power are not leaders who will not be of truth and justice. In 1 Peter 5 verses 2 to 3, we are reminded of the responsibility of leaders. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve. Let us remain vigilant, prayerful, and discerning as we navigate the political landscape, always seeking leaders who reflect the character of Christ in their words, actions, and integrity. As we weigh the political and ethical implications of Kamala Harris's career, we must ask ourselves what kind of leadership we genuinely want for our nation. From a Christian perspective, leadership is not merely about power or influence, but about service, humility, and the pursuit of justice. James 3 verse 1 reminds us, "Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly." Leaders hold an even greater responsibility, for they shape the lives and future of the people they serve. In the case of Kamala Harris, Judge Joe Brown's criticisms bring to light troubling aspects of her political journey that should give us pause as we consider her potential to lead. As pointed out by Judge Brown, one of the most concerning implications of Harris's career is the apparent disconnect between her public promises and her actual policies. Harris has consistently presented herself as a champion of justice, yet her record as a prosecutor reveals a different reality. Judge Brown's critique that Harris often prioritized her image over genuine justice raises serious moral questions. Proverbs 29 verse 4 says, "By justice, a king gives a country stability, but those greedy for bribes tear it down." If Harris's decisions were influenced by personal ambition or political convenience rather than a commitment to fairness and righteousness, we must carefully consider the consequences of such leadership. Another critical concern is the rise of authoritarianism, which Judge Brown warns about. He draws historical parallels to a time when governments, under the guise of promoting security and stability, began to infringe upon the rights and freedoms of the people. Similarly, Harris's advocacy for specific policies that limit free speech and promote government oversight, while positioned as necessary for combating misinformation, raises alarms about the potential for abuse of power. As Christians, we are called to be vigilant against systems that oppress or undermine the truth. Galatians 5 verse 1 declares, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." Any attempt to control the flow of information or silence dissenting voices should prompt us to reflect on the ethical implications of such actions. The ethical questions surrounding Harris's past alliances and campaign funding overshadow her political trajectory. When influential figures like George Soros and Steven Mnuchin, who have vested interests, play a central role in a politician's rise to power, we must ask whether that leader truly serves the people or fulfills the elite's agendas. Psalm 82 verse 3 says, "Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed." If a leader is accountable to influential donors rather than the needs of the ordinary people, their capacity to govern justly is severely compromised. Judge Brown's assessment of Harris also raises a broader concern about career politicians who, after years in power, seem more focused on winning elections than serving the public good. Harris's willingness to shift her stance, reshape her narrative, and appeal to whatever audience she's addressing may reflect a more profound issue within our political system, one where truth is sacrificed for expediency. This is deeply troubling from a Christian perspective, for we are called to be people of truth. Ephesians 4 verse 25 reminds us, "Therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body." Leadership built on half-truths and shifting loyalties is dangerous for any nation. In conclusion, Kamala Harris's career's political and ethical implications go beyond mere political maneuvering. They touch on more profound questions of justice, truth, and integrity, values central to our Christian faith. As we look toward the future and consider who will lead our nation, we must pray for discernment, asking God to guide us in selecting leaders who reflect His righteousness. Proverbs 16 verse 12 says, "Kings detest wrongdoing, for a throne is established through righteousness." Hold fast to this truth, seeking leaders who will uphold justice and integrity in every decision they make for our nation's sake and God's glory. As we draw to a close, we, as followers of Christ, must remember our vital role in discerning truth and justice in the world around us. We are not merely passive observers of the political landscape. We are called to engage with it in a way that reflects God's truth and righteousness. Philippians 4 verse 8 encourages us to dwell on whatever is true, noble, and right. This means looking beyond the surface of political rhetoric and carefully examining the character and decisions of those who seek to lead our nation. The concerns raised by Judge Joe Brown about Kamala Harris's record and public persona are not just political issues. They are moral issues that resonate deeply with our values as Christians. We must ask ourselves, what kind of leaders do we want to shape the future of our nation? Are they individuals who stand firm in their convictions, act justly, and seek the welfare of the people? Or are they leaders who prioritize ambition, compromise truth, and serve the interests of the powerful over the needs of the vulnerable? In these uncertain times, let God's wisdom guide us as we navigate the challenges of leadership and politics. James 1 verse 5 reminds us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." As we reflect on the leadership we need, may we always return to the foundation of God's truth, seeking leaders who will uphold justice, integrity, and compassion in all they do. I invite you to continue this journey of reflection and prayer with us. Subscribe to our channel, Jesus' Story, where we delve deeper into current events, politics, and the teachings of our Christian faith. Together, we can engage with the world thoughtfully and prayerfully, always striving to bring God's light into every corner of society. Let us stand firm in our faith, seeking the truth that sets us free and trusting God's sovereign hand to guide our nation through these trying times. Thank you for joining us today. Please like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. May God bless and keep you, and may His wisdom be with you as we navigate the challenges ahead.